Our microphone is located at the grave at Faraway Farm, where the mighty runner and sire lived most of his 30 years prior to his death last Saturday. The master of ceremonies for the burial services is Mr. Ira Dryman, well-known Kentucky horse breeder and farmer. Here now is Mr. Dryman.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today to pay tribute to a great soldier, one whose influence was felt by all groups and all peoples around the world. I would like, however, to think of this not as a funeral in the usual sense, but as a celebration, an expression of our appreciation for the long life and the very useful life man of war gave to this community, to the state of Kentucky, and to the horse industry in this country. One of the groups so benefited by man of war's life is the city of Lexington, and we have today the president of the Board of Commerce, Charles Sturgeon.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, for a quarter of a century, Lexington has been known as the home of the greatest horse the world has ever known, man of war. Most of the countries of the world have come here to see him. For almost 25 years, an average of 50,000 visitors each year have come to this barn and registered. Countless thousands of other visitors to the barn did not sign. Official commissions from many foreign countries, horse buyers, teachers, and students of livestock and universities and colleges from the country, Army commissions, foreign goodwill diplomats, and many other groups have made long journeys to see man of war. We know of commissions of horsemen and buyers from South American countries, Mexico, Germany, Japan, and other countries who have come to the bluegrass in numbers to see man of war and other horses here. Prior to the war, the Chamber of Commerce arranged an average of 35 convention tours to the horse farms with a stop at Faraway Farm to see man of war as the crowning feature. It is estimated that more than 130,000 convention delegates and friends made these trips. At other large gatherings, including conventions, football games, race meets, horse shows, horse sales, and etc., hundreds of visitors made these events an opportunity to see Big Red. From a business standpoint, man of war was Lexington's chief tourist attraction, bringing to this community thousands of persons who spent substantial sums here for hotel, transportation, restaurant, gasoline, and other expenses, souvenirs, and merchandise of many kinds. Man of war has helped to make the bluegrass a greater horse country, doing his part to advertise and publicize the advantages of this region as a breeding and raising community. This has resulted in the investment here of millions of dollars and the expenditure of millions more for labor and supplies. He has had the foremost part in making Lexington the Mecca of the horse-loving world. Horsemen and school children alike love man of war. The Chamber of Commerce each year has sent pictures of man of war and folders telling about the horses of the bluegrass to the hundreds of school children scattered all over the United States. We, the business people of Lexington, in addition to our deep affection for the old horse, are indebted to him for thousands of dollars in business which he has had a great part in creating for us. We shall miss him, however, not for the profit he brought, but because he was a living symbol of our great outdoor life, clean sportsmanship, that charm of the bluegrass which makes all people love it and the great horses it has produced. In the passing of Man of War, we have lost a friend as well as a good business partner. While we have lost Man of War, we have not lost his bloodlines, and for the sake of Lexington's fame as the center of the world's leading horse breeding region, may this blood be kept alive by thoroughbred breeders. Man of War has many famous sons, War Admiral, Crusader, and scores of others. But probably his greatest contribution to the fame and profit of the bluegrass today is through his daughters, which so far this year have produced the winners of nearly $800,000. Thus, through his sons and daughters, Lexington and the bluegrass may expect to continue to reap fame and fortune in the horse world for all the generations to come, and to continue to attract the tourists who always will want to see the nation's best horses. We are indebted to Mr. Riddle, who made it possible for Man of War to remain one of our leading citizens for a quarter of a century. And we are grateful for the beautiful memorial statue which is to be erected on this site, which was the home of Big Red. Mr. Riddle's generosity and his interest in this community is appreciated by the business and professional men of Lexington. May we join him in paying this last tribute to our friend and benefactor, Man of War.
Thank you, Charlie. Another very large group directly affected by the influence of Man of War is the group of breeders of thoroughbred horses. And the breeding fraternity is represented today by the president of the Thoroughbred Club of America, who also is the director of the National Association of Thoroughbred Clubs, A.B. Hancock, Jr.
The name of Man of War is a household word wherever the thoroughbred is loved and the sport of racing is practiced. It seems a very short while ago that I went with my father to the old association track to welcome home Big Red. It was a much happier day. In the 27 years that have ensued, he has indelibly stamped himself on the type of the American thoroughbred, and he has made that thoroughbred the greatest horse, I think, in the world. He is American right down to the base of his toes, and we all hate to see him go. His sons are producing, his daughters are producing, and we will never lose the influence that he has brought to us.
We have talked about Man of War as the sire or breeding horse. He was also the outstanding racehorse. We have with us today the chairman of the Kentucky State Racing Commission, who is also past president of the National Association of State Racing Commissioners, Leslie Combs.
In paying homage to Man of War, I think the remark made about him by his old groom, Will Harbor, very appropriate when he said he had no equal on the track or in the stud. Then he would recite the races that his guests have won. This is a very sad day for all of us in the bluegrass, as Man of War, or Big Red, as he was affectionately known, has done more for this community than others.
Another branch of the racing industry is represented by the president of the King, L.L. Hagan II. We are gathered here to pay final respects to the greatest of all thoroughbreds. His record on the track was unique. As a 2-year-old, he won 9 of his 10 starts and suffered 1 defeat, horse upset. As a 3-year-old, he started 11 times and was 11 times the winner, including the $80,000 match race with Sir Barton, which he won by 7 lengths. Big Red was without doubt the greatest of his time, and unquestionably the greatest known thoroughbred of all time. In closing, I would like to pay final respects for the racetracks of America to the greatest champion of them all. Probably more lines have been written about Man o' War than any other horse. Representing the press, and horse papers, first is J.A. Estes of the Blood Horse.
It hardly seems necessary to remark that in all the history of thoroughbred breeding, the greatest story is that of Man o' War. I have written it laboriously in the last few days, and I have had to stop once in a while and brush away a tear. Now that may sound silly, but it happens. I'm sure it's happened to a good many of you. There was something more than a horse about this horse, and people became extremely fond of him. I have never been able to account for that. I only see it happening time and time again. A few years ago, a minister, I think he lived in Minnesota, walked into the office, and without announcing his name or identifying himself in any other way, he held up his two hands and he said, "I have just put these two hands on Man o' War." And we laughed. We are used to people feeling that reverent about Man o' War, and sometimes you don't know whether it's reverence or whether you go a little too far or not. But I do know that this horse had a greater place in the hearts of people than any horse that's ever lived in America. They loved him almost as you love the dog that's been with you for years and years, and you know everything that he does. And the things that people remember about Man o' War are the little things. When they came to see him, their own special fondnesses for him. And I am proud to say that I carry away a great many of those, and I shall not be ashamed of any of them.
Another representative of the press is Neville Dunn of the Thoroughbred Record.
The growth and expansion of racing and breeding have caused us to regard these activities as business operations. But racing and breeding have always been, and always will be in principle, the greatest sport that we of America have the privilege of enjoying. The vast throng of you people who have gathered here today proves this statement beyond any doubt. For you have gathered not to pay respect to a money-making machine, but to an animal who lived and died a gentleman. Man o' War has truly won immortality, in a measure perhaps greater than any of his contemporary human beings. For in his own lifetime, he drafted the pages of future history by siring sons and daughters who will carry on his blood as long as a thoroughbred horse is bred and raised. The flesh of Man o' War is no longer activated by the indomitable will and his heart, but his spirit of generosity and courage has passed into his descendants and will be passed on in turn by them to their descendants. It can never be extinguished. His heart, he will always be remembered as such.
This would not be complete without the manager of Faraway Farm. I'd like to present Patrick O'Neill.
Speaking for Mr. Riddle and myself, I wish to express our appreciation of the tribune offered here and all over the world, all over the country, and in foreign lands, in honor of Man o' War. I thank you.
You have seen in the press something about the passing of Man o' War, of course, and some statements credited to Dr. William McGee. We would like to present him to you, Dr. William McGee.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's little that I can add to what has been said about this great horse. I have always felt that although my good friend Mr. Riddle actually owned him, in reality he belonged to American sportsmen everywhere who consider performance the prime criterion of greatness. I'm sure all of us here today feel a little better inside to be able to be here and see this final tribute paid to such a deserving figure. And I'm sure that Mr. Riddle, were he able to be with us today, would share this same feeling.
As was stated in the beginning, I hope we will look on this not as a funeral in the usual sense, but as a celebration. Celebrating our appreciation for the great things Man o' War did for us and other places. Man o' War was foaled at August Belmont's nursery stud on the Georgetown Pike on March 29, 1917. He died here at Faraway Farm, November 1st, 1947. It was recognized from the beginning that the leggy and large-frame chestnut colt by Fairplay out of Mahuba was a good horse. Major Belmont was convinced that he was the best of the crop. And when he decided, because of pressure of war work, to sell his yearling, he thought for a time of holding Man o' War, now named by Mrs. Belmont, out of the sale. He had, of course, no suspicion of the towering class of this colt. He merely felt a horseman's reluctance to let a youngster go of such high promise. But on July 24th, 1918, Major Belmont wrote to Mrs. Kane a letter which is still preserved in the files of the Blood Horse. It says in part, "As I already notified you by telegram, I have decided to add Man o' War to the sale." He held out 5 yearlings out of this sale, all yearling fillies, and all of them became great producers. This clearly indicates he was right in his first desire to keep Man o' War. But due to the pressure of war work, he decided to sell it. The colt was sold about 3 weeks later, so it did not have the preparation given the other yearlings and was not sleek and fat as the others. Mr. Lewis Fusel, then training a small stable for Mr. Riddle, saw Man o' War at the nursery stud here at that farm and suggested to Mr. Riddle that he buy the Fairplay colt in the Saratoga sales. Mr. Riddle bought him for $5,000. Sounds low today, but he was the 3rd highest priced colt in the Belmont consignment. Had the contending bidder bought this colt that day, Man o' War would probably have been a hunter and not raced on the flat. The colt was broken at Saratoga and then sent to Mr. Riddle's farm at Berlin, Maryland, for the winter. And it was there that the trainer, Fusel, watching the horse's tremendous reach, began to suspect that he had something out of the ordinary. He was the favorite when he made his first start at Belmont Park and won the race by 6 lengths in front of a field of maidens in 59 seconds for the 5/8 mile. He was always the favorite after that and easily won all of his 2-year-old races except one when he was in a pocket and couldn't get out in time to make his usual run. At 3, Man o' War won all of his races, meeting all comers, and in one race he won by an estimated 100 lengths. Time will not permit recounting his great performances, and most people have read about them anyway, but it must be said that in the entire career of 21 races, he had to compete against only 51 horses. Some horses meet that many in a matter of a few weeks in these days. Of course, it was a champion's manifest superiority from the day he first appeared in public that narrowed his opposition to only those comparatively few horses who could be thought by the fondest admirers to have a chance against him. Man o' War had several jockeys, but it did not seem to make any difference who was on his back. Nothing in the way of the horse flesh could beat him that year, and only one horse was ever to extend him. As a racehorse, Man o' War had no equal when he was a 3-year-old. He was retired from racing at the height of his glory that fall. He was sent to Lexington January 27, 1921, spent the night in Mr. E.R. Bradley's barn at the old association track, came out the next morning to canter past the crowd in his last exhibition under saddle. Then he went to High Stock Farm under the supervision of Miss Elizabeth Dangerfield and was moved to Faraway Farm in 1922. His record as a sire is also unusual and equals that as a racehorse. Many of his get are numbered among the great and will continue to carry on now that the wonder horse has gone to his reward. Big Red was known everywhere and had more visitors, caused more people to come to Lexington or even to Kentucky than any other attraction. The death of Man o' War marks the end of an era in American turf and breeding history. He broke many records as a racehorse, was without parallel as a sire, and lived longer by far than does the average horse. Few will remember him as a foal, or yearly, or even on the racetrack. But many thousands will remember him as they saw him and recognized in him at once the spark of greatness. The horsemen who come from all over the world to see him will remember him vividly. The massive body, the wide sweeps of muscle, the great chest, the die-cut perfection of his legs and feet, the high head, the imperial air, the seal of power and majesty. They will not look to see another one like it. And over the world, a scattered million of princes and paupers who have gone out to Faraway to see him will remember the look in his eyes, the ceremonial dignity with which he held himself for their inspection. They will remember, too, the patient and eloquent recital of his worshipful groom, the late Will Harbert, who spoke of Big Red as the mostest horse, and often said, "There is just one Man o' War." The devoted comradeship between this horse and his groom was apparent to all who visited Big Red. Harry B. Scott, manager of Faraway Farm for almost 14 years, said, and I quote, "Man o' War was the smartest horse I ever knew, and no other horse got next to me as he did." Ed Wilder, the secretary of the Board of Commerce of Lexington, said, "I have seen tears come to the eyes of men and women who have looked upon him, and I have seen adults and children as well thrilled to the touch of him. I have seen famous horsemen from this and from foreign countries pass their hands over him with profound admiration. They were gazing upon greatness in a simple form, a big horse with a big heart who did not know how to be anything but kind and affectionate." It has been stated that Mr. Riddle was once asked what price he would ask for Man o' War. He meditated a while, and then he replied, "He is beyond price. I regard myself simply as his custodian, holding him in trust for the benefit of the thoroughbred of the future." Churchill Downs and other race tracks at this time are lowering the flag, asking the people to stand in silent tribute while taps are played. And we have word, and I quote, 3,000 soldiers of the U.S. Army's 1st Cavalry Division will present arms in Tokyo Thursday evening while taps are blown in a military memorial service for Man o' War, who was made an honorary colonel of this division last March during a recruiting drive. Truly, Man o' War was a memorable horse. Almost from the beginning, he touched the imagination of men, and they saw different things in him. But one thing they all remembered, that he brought an exaltation into their hearts.